is Empyrion Galactic Survival. I'm Eustace the Monk. It's yet another open world survival game in early access. I think there's only about 2 dozen out there right now. There might be 3 dozen. Who really knows at this point? I don't think anyone's taken a real census of all of the early access open world survival games, that's for sure. This one's different though. It's different in that it's a science fiction game, which there aren't too many of them out there right now. Starforge ended up being a complete pile of whale shit. There's Eden Star, which is still in early access. I haven't had a chance to try that one out yet. And of course Space Engineers. It's the 800-pound gorilla right now. And also Empyrion's actually a real survival game. What do I mean by a real survival game? Not that it's really exists out in the world, but it's real in that you actually have to work to survive. It's not like some other games I've played lately that claim to be survival games, but food and shelter are so easy to come by that the game is just essentially scampering through a forest of plenty. In Empyrion, you've just crash landed on a shitty little Mars-like planet, and all you have is your spacesuit, a pistol, and whatever survival supplies are packed into the escape pod. And that's when you realize that the atmosphere on the planet isn't breathable. You need oxygen or else you're going to choke to death. And you need food or you're going to starve. And you need these things right fucking now. And that's how immersive this game is. You find yourself scampering around, hurrying to set up your oxygen generators and getting your base set up so you don't croak over. Luckily, your escape pod is equipped with basic crafting devices, a small oxygen dispenser, emergency rations, and basic crafting supplies to get something going. The crafting in this game is pretty cool. You have to build up finished devices from manufactured parts that you make in the crafting devices, and you make the parts from raw materials that you mine from resource patches that are around you. So it really feels like you're building machinery rather than just clicking on buttons. You know, I have an iron ingot and I click a button that looks like a pistol, and a handgun shoots out the ass end of my crafter. Oh, it's not like that at all. It can get a bit annoying because the UI makes it kind of hard at times to know what parts you need to build what, but once you learn what you're doing, it gets pretty easy. The game has a very authentic infrastructure of devices and structures and how they work together. And what I mean by that is, to get breathable oxygen to your suit, you need to get oxygen bottles out of the oxygen generator and then take it to tanks, fill up your oxygen tanks. Then from the tanks, you go to your dispenser that hooks up to your suit and refills it with breathable air. Same thing goes with getting food. You can kill creatures and pull the meat off of them, but you have to take it to your food processor to cook it and make it edible. So you're never really quite out of the woods when it comes to fighting to survive. You can grow food at your base, but you do need to put up grow lights over the crops and take them to the food processor as well to cook them and make them into actual edible food. You're always needing to deal with the fact that you're on a hostile, shitty planet and that survival is going to be an issue for you. There's a lot of weapons and equipment that are craftable right now. Pistols, rifles, shotguns, rocket launchers. There's so much cool stuff to build already. There's turret-mounted guns. There's all kinds of tables and chairs if you want to build cosmetic items for your base. I don't really ever bother with that because it seems like a waste of resources. Also, while not all of the wildlife is aggressive on the planet, the unfriendly ones can cause serious problems if you're far away from your base. They inject you with parasites, they tear big pieces off of you and cause excessive bleeding, they'll poison you, all kinds of different stuff. And you would better get an antibiotic shot or a med kit or something pronto. These items need stuff to craft them that are sometimes kind of hard to get, so a trip away from your base might end up with you just scampering back to gather materials to keep parasites at bay. It's another aspect of why the game is so immersive and why this planet seems so dangerous. And that's actually kind of the irony of this game. At this point in its development, its greatest strength is also its greatest weakness to a certain extent. Your air and food bars deplete really too quickly, in my opinion, and your power packs don't last nearly as long as they might, so your time is almost constantly spent getting resources, food, and oxygen. Once you start creating food at your base, you pretty much need to keep it powered up all the time in order to power your refrigeration units, and that requires power units that you also have to manufacture. It seems at this point to be a never-ending circle that's difficult to break out of. But that's part of the immersion, is that your food can spoil if it's not refrigerated in this game. It's not like you can just throw a raw piece of meat in a trunk and it stays like that forever. It's incredible. Also, unfortunately, makes exploring for new resources very difficult. You can scarcely travel a kilometer from your base, do a bit of mining, and get back without it causing problems. You'll end up running short of air, you'll end up short of food, you or both. And since you're only finding new resource patches when you get 200 or 300 meters or so away from them, it's tough to gather enough of them to make a sizable ship or decent vehicles. This makes the creation of cool vehicles and spaceships an issue. You're constantly having to stop to eat or refill your air, or, oh, it's tough to go mine for more iron. Oh, there's, I just got poisoned again. I gotta run back to base. That sort of thing. That's really the only major thing wrong with the game right now. Your vitals, they just decrease too fast. The other things I could mention are already being worked on, larger solar systems, the whole procedurally generated galaxy made up of them are all on the way. Polar regions on the planet aren't accessible yet, but that's coming as well. They're working on the creatures. Sometimes they look a little silly. They're not too bad. Beginning of pre-alpha, they were all actually dinosaurs and Unity stock assets as placeholders. So they've come a long way for the creatures so far. So I'm getting a good feeling that that's going to get worked on as well. And there's a surprising lack of any kind of game crashing or bugs. I've only had 1 or 2 instances where it's crashed or done something weird, like this one time where I was mining up some rocks to make new power modules and I fell right through the earth, probably screaming in my helmet. But I just stopped the game, restarted it, and it saved it right where I was standing on the ground mining rocks, so I lost nothing. And that's only happened once. So the game is amazingly stable right now for its stage in development. If you're looking for a good sci-fi survival game, you can't go wrong with Empyrion, pure and simple. Like I've said before, it's still in pre-alpha and already has all this, and it's come such a long way in a short time. I was playing it while they still had a non-disclosure agreement going on and blah 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 blah. And just to have seen how far they've come in like 4 or 5 months is just staggering. You should definitely check it out if this is the kind of game you enjoy. It's well worth it at this point.